was built back in 1916 by the American Bridge and Iron Company of Ambridge, Pennsylvania for the Central of Georgia Railroad. It's 80 feet long and it weighs 80 tons. The locomotive's number is 80. No correlation. Who here knows how heavy 80 tons is? It's a lie. 160,000 pounds, that is correct. However, the real answer I was looking for is 80 tons is heavy. Now that you know that 80 tons is heavy, it will surprise you to learn this turntable was entirely turned by manpower. This was called a strong arm table. On either end of the table would have been a pair of poles. They would have needed 4 men to spin this locomotive around by themselves with no external power whatsoever. By the 1920s, they ended up moving this turntable from Macon, Georgia, to Cedartown. Cedartown, Georgia is one of the smaller terminuses for the Central of Georgia. That meant they had smaller engines, a little bit easier to turn, with that manpower still. And then came the 1940s and 1950s, and with it, diesel electric locomotives, just like the locomotive that pulls your train today. Tag number 80 is a diesel electric locomotive. Turntables were important for the operation of steam locomotives. The steam engine is built facing forward. They could definitely go backwards if you wanted to, however, you ain't going to see much of nothing due to the large tender behind it, which holds the fuel and water for the locomotive. Steam locomotives were also costly to maintain. They often needed at least 3 or 4 people to operate in one shift. Unlike a diesel electric locomotive.
Mind your way.
They were cheaper to maintain and only really needed 1 person to operate.
I'm on Facebook Live.
So as they began to replace the costly steam locomotives with the cheaper, more efficient diesel locomotives, they began to return to turntables. Also because locomotives like Tag 80 is capable of running forward and reverse with no problem whatsoever. They did that with visibility in mind. So when they retired this turntable, they put it in storage. They were eventually going to scrap it. So we acquired it in the early 1980s, had it fully restored to its current and former glory. We also installed a 25 horsepower electric motor, which is located under the cabin where conductor Zach is. Now, I don't want you to worry about me or Zach, though, because that electricity will not pass through a bad conductor. Here for another 45 minutes, folks. Before we start sprinting this locomotive, I want to talk a little bit about lights on the railroad. Now, if you're ever traveling home at night, you see a rail come up on a train crossing, I want you guys to look out for the flashing red lights. Also, locomotives are equipped with ditch lights. This locomotive has them. Normally, what they would do is they would oscillate back and forth. So when you guys go home tonight, if you come up on any train tracks, please make sure you watch out for those. Don't beat the train. We would love it, and your family would love it, especially because it's Valentine's Day. Make it home. See, they do that. Little ditch lights. They oscillate back and forth. Now, before we start spinning, I'm going to take 1 second to remind everybody to please stand behind the yellow line. Don't touch any safety rope, please. And if you are parents of small kiddos or wives or full-on husbands, take them at the hand at this time, please. So I want to see some hands here. How do you like dinosaurs? Oh, I heard it. Well, here's the fact. Dinosaurs are pretty cool. They weigh on average about 8 tons. And then we go over turntables. Anybody ever heard of a school bus before? Or how many ever seen a school bus? Alright. Well, a school bus, they weigh on average about 11 to 13 tons. And the space shuttle, unloaded, weighs 75 tons. 5 tons less than our turntable here. Number 80. Personally, this is my favorite engine in our collection. Here's why. This locomotive was built in 1968 by the Electric Division of General Motors as a high-hood GP38, the very first GP38 production model ever produced by E&D. TAG, Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia, also known as the TAG, was historically the only railroad ever headquartered here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Now, you may have noticed it had a name, John A. Chambliss. Who's that? Well, John Chambliss, he was the vice president of the TAG Railway when they received this locomotive. They ended up bestowing it in his honor on his 80th birthday. That is why this locomotive is numbered 80. Now, this locomotive was ended up falling into ownership of the Southern Railway when they took ownership of the tag. Would eventually fall into Norfolk Southern ownership, and we would take ownership after we had it donated to us from the Chancellor's family, who won it at auction. We had it fully restored in 2017 to its current and former glory. Here's a fun fact: it's worn the original paint scheme longer here at the museum than it did in revenue service on the Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia Railroad. The reason why it's on a high hood is because the front of the locomotive right here has a high hood. Now we're going to line our turntable up on track number 2. We're going to explain why here in about 5 and 7/8 seconds. Alright folks, here's what's going to happen now. Glenn's going to bring tag 80 off the turntable on track 2. Our cars are parked on track 1. We're not going to push you back, so what's going to happen, the sack is going to go down there with Glenn, throw a switch back from track 2 onto track 1. We're going to reverse the locomotive into the train. That means the last car on the way here will become the first car on the way back. And at this time, if you want, we're going to head to the other end of the train. If you guys want to watch and see how we couple the train